and out of the shadowy mists there rose a call, and the call echoed across the land, and the people heard the call, and that call was the Neoncast, episode 18. Yes, episode 18 required a dramatic opening such as this. Such a long absence requires, I think, a dramatic return. It has been a while since my last Neoncast. I have seen some movies that I guess were worth talking about. But, I don't know, things and stuff. It is all about, hitting that groove where I'm like, okay, there's two things, or I feel like I have enough to say. I don't know. Because, there was like the Cloverfield Paradox recently, which I think I enjoyed more than most people. Not that it's a good movie. I was kind of surprised with how little fun people had with it. Because I kind of had fun with it. We're going to talk about that a little later, though, in the context of Annihilation. But first, I think I was just going to dive right into it and start by talking about Black Panther. I mean, wow, what a phenomenon! I think most people who follow, this kind of stuff and hype and whatever, probably saw this coming. That it would be super successful, but I mean, not this successful. I believe every article I've read about this says that, it exceeded even the expectations of the optimists in the industry. I mean, it found a niche. Look, okay, we're gonna get into a little politics in a minute, but as I said on a previous episode, I only talk about politics on this podcast when it's when I'm gonna say something unexpected, because people who likely most people who are listening to this, if not all of them, also follow me on Twitter, and I think if you follow me on Twitter, you pretty much know what my politics are, and so there is no need to reiterate them. I think it's ridiculous, and so if I'm gonna say something maybe unexpected, then I will say it here. But, we can start just with a little general talk about this movie. I thought it was good, fine. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I was going to see it again today, but I ended up not doing that. And I also happened to see it in Tel Aviv. Like, I didn't even see it in the States, and the reaction was really big, not just for the Black Panther in particular, also stuff like post-credit scenes. Like, people were really big Marvel fans there, which also played into my sort of thoughts about Infinity War, which, again, we're going to get to a little later. Black Panther was good. It was good. It was like a good Marvel movie. I liked that it wasn't an origin story in the same way that Spider-Man Homecoming wasn't like a Spider-Man origin story, because both of these characters, Black Panther and Spider-Man, were introduced in Captain America Civil War, which kind of cleared up the need to actually do that, to actually introduce you to the character. Because I feel like if Black Panther, like if the first, let's say, quarter to half, or maybe the entire first act of Black Panther would be like, young T'Challa discovering that there's being told that there's a Black Panther thing and then training for it, that would have been super lame, I think. We already got it. In Civil War, they sort of explained it to us. They actually re-explain it here so that this movie stands on its own in very broad, basic terms. Here's the history of Wakanda. Here's the history of what the Black Panther is. Boom. Story. And in kind of the same way that Spider-Man Homecoming is like a conceptual origin story. It's not about how Peter Parker got his powers. It's about how Peter Parker became Spider-Man. Like how, on more of like an ideals and a moral proving level. In that same way, this movie's the movie about T'Challa coming into his own, becoming the king of Wakanda and becoming Black Panther, like, for all that means, beyond just like being able to punch bad guys in the face. There's other stuff. There's like responsibilities and quips. I think the king of Wakanda, the old legends say the king of Wakanda has to have good quips. But yeah, you know, basically both of these are like stories about the characters coming into their own, not being born, but kind of growing up. Like, you know, it's like a rite of passage origin story, which I think we're probably going to see more of. Especially with these like shared universe, like Marvel has the privilege of being able to introduce, like, let's say in Infinity War, they introduced, like, I don't know, Captain Marvel, and then the Captain Marvel movie can do the same thing and not just like tell you that Captain Marvel exists, but rather like, you know, give you like a story of how Captain Marvel became Captain Marvel. So yeah, anyway, Wakanda, really interesting look and place, and I looked it up later, and there's a lot of like real African cultures integrated into the things, and they really put a lot of tactile effort into it, which I always appreciate. I really like that stuff, and I also like the whole Afro-futurist kind of look to everything, and yeah, the clothes and the tribalism and one review, I believe it was Red Letter Media, said something about this movie that I actually didn't agree with really. You know, I'm just gonna kind of slowly morph into spoilers. I don't know if I liked it. Everybody's seen it. If you haven't seen it, if you're just waiting for my yes or no, should I see this or not? Yeah, sure, see it. But now I'm gonna slowly spoil things, and so I guess there'll be a time code below for Annihilation, which also I'll probably speak of briefly in non-spoilers, and then just kind of, it's just a little difficult, and I kind of like to jump around, and so I inevitably drift in and out of spoilers, and so pardon me, and you can see the time code anyway. Red Letter Media said that it felt clashy to them that a society that was this advanced was also that like tribal based, and their king is crowned via single combat with like a shield and a spear. And I've actually thought that was a great comic book thing, the concept of cultural conservatism, which is something that we don't really have, a society that holds on really tightly to its old culture despite becoming more modernized in other kinds of ways. And I actually think that's a great idea for a comic book universe society. I also am much more willing to accept that a society like that all agreed to keep themselves hidden from the world, like a society that would like elect a government or something like that. There would be too many differing opinions on things for them to be able to maintain a rigid foreign policy like that. I almost feel like a tribe of people who are like super insular and develop this kind of close, tight-knit bond and, have maintained their secrecy. I can buy that if they're all that attached to their sort of ancient cultural roots. I mean, I thought that was kind of cool and clever. Okay, and so here, I'm going to say something. My little list now says politics. It's just the word that says politics. Dun, dun, dun. Here's the one thing I gotta say, because I see a lot of people talking about this, and I also kind of spoke about it a little bit about how some of the articles before this movie came out were kind of not giving credit to a lot of black-led comic book type things from the past, most notably Blade, which was, actually a huge trailblazer for not only comic book movies, but also R-rated comic book movies. I mean, Blade was fucking way ahead of its time in terms of what it was. Like I said, a black led with a woman scientist in it, and it was an R-rated comic book movie, and it was like in the 90s. It was it's kind of surprising that a movie like that not only got made, but it was also very successful. But I totally understand why people say that this movie is sort of unique. Blade had a black lead and a black female lead, but it was not. This movie is it's not that the cast is black. It is just very sort of Afrocentric, maybe is the way to describe it. It's very, the focus is also on like African culture and African style culture and values more than just the hero happens to be a black person. It's more than that, and I actually understand why this movie is sort of so important to some people, and why it's had such a huge sort of it's had huge success among certain communities. By the way, not just in the United States, also in Africa. I saw on Twitter lots of love for this movie in Africa. Yeah, and the cast was just really, really great. And I actually liked all of the character stuff and the costume design stuff way more than like the Black Panther stuff. Like, in fact, like the Black Panther action-y stuff is probably the weakest aspect of this movie, even though Chadwick Boseman and his T'Challa moments are really great. He's just awesome. I love him. I'm just saying that car chases and stuff and the two Black Panther suits jumping around in a CGI environment, that was not where this movie's shown. It's shown with like character moments and stuff like that. And like I said, really great cast of, multiple critically acclaimed Oscar-winning, Emmy-winning actors. As I said, it's not like a typical origin story. It's actually kind of almost built like a Shakespearean tragedy or it's like The Lion King or some kind of, like Disney movie like that. Like you feel like there's this thing in the past and the prodigal son returns and there's this conflict and it's like a prince that is now forced to confront his father's, the demons that his father created. It's very high drama, and I actually like that a lot. That was something unlike what we saw. I feel like maybe Thor, the first Thor, tried to do that a little. I cast thee down from Olympus. But, then they kind of muddled it up with like a fish out of water story. Here they actually rode the whole Shakespearean tragedy to the end, and that was great. That was like I feel like Spider-Man Homecoming and this earn a better seat at the table as far as I'm concerned, because they're not just a regular, Doctor Strange had some great stuff in it, especially like I said, the third act I thought was fantastic in Doctor Strange, but it was just an origin story. It was just here's a guy and he learns how to use the power. It was really, really by the numbers, and so it's a little hard for me to like put it high up with, maybe something even like this, which didn't have as good. It sort of had a kind of a weak third act, but was also a more original, a less formulaic story for this genre, which to me is one of the biggest fun killers for me. Is like, here we go, it's another one of the insert cliche here. That's hard to deal with now because there's so many of these. You got to work a little harder, and like I said, setting up these characters in Civil War, and by the way, Civil War is like directly connected to this movie was a really smart idea. I'm just going to say a couple of things about Killmonger. I thought was a really good villain. I think it's kind of funny that, again, because of social politics, people are like, Killmonger is, he's actually the good guy and yada, yada. I thought that was kind of funny. I like Michael B. Jordan a lot. I think he's, I kind of like this idea of directors finding actors that they kind of vibe with and then working with them a lot. In this case, Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, they worked 3 times together on Fruitvale Station, also on Creed, and now on this. We're also going to talk about Annihilation and Alex Garland and Oscar Isaac. There's a lot of that, and I actually like that. I like that directors find actors that they can, they feel like they can get good stuff out of, and they work well together. Super important synergy with like a director and an actor. Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's another example of that going on. I really, really loved Andy Serkis in this. Claw was just an amazing cackling villain, like a Joker kind of character. He was just like awesome. Let me see. Infinity War. I don't know if this was intentional. The whole idea of like, because clearly Infinity War, a big part of Infinity War, at least a substantial part of Infinity War, is going to play out in Wakanda. The prevailing theory is that the final Infinity Stone, the Soul Stone, I think, is in Wakanda, and it's buried somewhere there with that vibranium meteorite, and maybe it's related to the plant that gives them the Black Panther powers. So, and that's why there's going to be this big battle in Wakanda, because maybe that's where Thanos sends his army to get that final stone. Whether or not that was intentional in terms of like them predicting that Black Panther would be really, really popular and then, following it right up with Infinity War or not, oh boy, is that going to help it. It's funny because I was trying to think of anything that could, help Infinity War be even bigger than people anticipate, because Avatar is a mountain that I do not think anyone will ever climb again. Something about when it came out and how it came out, there was this, like, it was like lightning in a bottle, and like it made amounts of money that I just don't think are possible anymore. Except that now that I saw how popular Black Panther was, and Infinity War is coming out in like 3 months, and the Wakanda hype is still going to be at its peak. Maybe they'll even like release the Blu-ray right before, so that people are going to be all like Wakanda'd up for this. But like, how lucky are they that they're going to hit this like all new market? Because Black Panther made all this money clearly because it drew in people who don't go to every comic book movie. Or who maybe even don't go to any comic book movie. This expanded the audience. It targeted specific segments of population, certainly, with its appeal, but so what? That's, good for them. The word, people hate the word diversity. I say replace it in your head with the word variety. Because that's what I do a lot. I like, one of the things I wrote down here in my list is Otherland. Tad Williams, the series of novels called Otherland, was something that I proposed on Twitter would be a sort of a black-led and Africa-centric science fiction franchise that maybe somebody would like green light because Black Panther got so popular. And it is quintessentially diverse. It stars a South African woman who's a computer teacher. It's a bushman, an African bushman, a child who has progeria. When you think about it in social politics terms, it checks a lot of boxes, but it all makes perfect sense in the context of the story. And additionally, like I said, Don't think about it as diversity. Think about it as variety. How often have you seen a character like this? How often have you seen a story explore these kinds of themes? And so, yeah, some people are going to, I even said this about Black Panther. I said, some people are going to enjoy this obnoxiously and they're going to enjoy it maybe for the wrong reasons. But that's not the Thing's fault. It's not Black Panther's fault that somebody thinks that Killmonger's ideas are actually awesome. So, yeah. I just think Otherland, think about this as like a mini recommendation. If you're a book person, you should go read Otherland by Tad Williams. It's like a trapped in a virtual reality kind of story, but it's sort of high concept. It's kind of fantasy-ish. And that's all I got to say about Black Panther. And so then we are going to transition now to topic number 2, which is the Alex Garland written and directed movie, Annihilation. So yeah, let's take a step back for a second and talk about Alex Garland. Probably the most interesting, or maybe one of the top 2 or 3 most interesting people working in science fiction for a number of years already in the movie industry. They actually wrote the novel The Beach, but then wrote a bunch of movie screenplays, including, but not limited to, 28 Days Later. It actually is limited to, he actually wrote like a video game and a couple other things. But he wrote 28 Days Later, and he wrote Never Let Me Go, and also Sunshine, great movie, and Ex Machina and Annihilation, right? So he wrote and directed Ex Machina and Annihilation, and then he also just wrote Dread, which is great, 28 Days Later, which is great, Sunshine, which is great, and Never Let Me Go, which is maybe not as great as those other ones, but is also quite an interesting topic. It's based on a book, I believe. Anyway, Alex Garland is back with his new movie Annihilation, which is based on a book, a weird book I hear. I have not read it. And it stars Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson, that we all loved from Ragnarok, Oscar Isaac, and what's his name? Wong, who's in The Martian and Doctor Strange. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I really liked Ex Machina. And I thought it was just well shot and well written, well directed. It was interesting. It was thought-provoking. And this hit those notes too. It maybe left me with less to ponder. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm still kind of throwing it around in my mind. I've heard that this novel is very hard to adapt, and I think I can understand that. I can understand what's trying to it's trying to convey certain abstract things, and I'm trying to process them. And I do think that this movie will probably benefit from repeat viewings. I was trying to pay attention to a lot of little detail, which there is a lot of, and it's really quite striking. It's well acted. The music is phenomenal. The music and the sound design, I think, is perhaps the best aspect of this. The visuals are pretty damn great. It's very tense. It has some moments of intense violence. And it's just really weird, and I mean it's weird deliberately. It's a movie about the weird. It's a movie about the alien. And again, I'm gonna fade in the spoilers here. I only had a couple of minutes worth to discuss non-spoilers for this, but a lot of movies in the past have attempted to do stuff like this. Actually, the newer movies in like the Alien franchise, Prometheus and now Alien Covenant, kind of try to do this thing too. Monsters, the movie that made Gareth Edwards' career, which he then went on to make Godzilla and then Rogue One, sort of, most of. Monsters and even Avatar, the idea of like alien life, not necessarily meeting an alien that comes down in a spaceship. I'm talking about alien life on the biological level, alien flora and fauna, an alien biosphere, either going to an alien planet and seeing its biosphere, or maybe having its biosphere come here, infect in some way, mutate what goes on Earth. Like I said, the stories that revolve around that concept are multitude, including Roadside Picnic, which is a novel that I love and have spoken on this podcast about before. The idea of like, like I said, alien animals and alien plants and alien diseases. It's a well-trodden road. And I actually think that this one does it really, really quite well. And also is the one that dives the deepest into the kind of the ramifications of something like that. Like where contact with something that alien changes you to the point where maybe you even stop being you, in more and less literal senses. Just that idea of the contact with the unknown and the attempt to find some kind of common ground. I felt like there was a line at the very end of the movie that I thought perfectly encapsulated what this movie was trying to convey. When Wong asks her, what did it want? And she said, I don't think it wanted anything. I'm not even sure it was aware of us, or I'm not even sure it knew we existed. That was the thing that I felt was like the most profound sort of revelation in the entire movie. That this life form was doing just what it does, which is try to merge with other life and become that life. And, she didn't attack, the creature didn't attack her. It just did what she was doing. It was trying to become her. Not even in a nefarious way or a deliberate way, almost in an atavistic way, in a biological way. Why do you eat food? Why do you breathe oxygen? It's the thing that it's your biological imperative in order to continue surviving. And so I think the point of this movie was, in a way, that this life form, this alien life form that crashed into Earth, its only biological imperative was like to find other life and become it. Not in a bad way, just the life way. The only problem is when that infringes on stuff like sentient life, like conscious, higher thinking life. Then you get like these philosophical contradictions. And I think that's why Oscar Isaac kind of went crazy and ended up killing himself. He almost lost the ability to distinguish whether or not he was the real him. And that was a really interesting, I thought, concept, and it explored it in an interesting way. And the more I think about it, and even the more I speak about it here, the more sort of interesting that idea feels to me. And I think that idea of it trying to mimic or merge with or become the life that it encounters also manifests in higher forms, because it seems that the only people who emerged from the shimmer were people who had a reason to come back. It's almost like when the alien life form kind of, merged with the people, it absorbed their fatalism or something of the sort, and that's why they ended up, dying in there. But I also think that some of it is probably not meant to be understood either literally or at all. And that's part of the idea of encountering something alien. I'll go back to Roadside Picnic for a second, a novel by the Strugatsky brothers from the 70s. And the idea of that is that there was some kind of alien invasion on Earth, and the aliens landed in several places, hung out for a little bit, and then left. But the areas that they left, the areas where they were and that they left, are now quarantined off because there's a lot of weird shit there. They left a lot of stuff behind, and also a lot of it is like super lethal in very weird ways. Like there's this gas, and if it touches you, you turn to jelly. I don't know, stuff like that. And a big element of that story is that nobody understands why or how these things do what they do. They are entirely alien to us. And the name of the novel, again, you can skip ahead if you don't want to know, even though this isn't exactly a spoiler. The name of the novel comes from a discussion that is held in the book where somebody compares that situation to a bunch of people who are driving, in their car and stop on the side of the road to have a picnic and leave, the refuse of their picnic. And then the animals trying to divine what the purpose is of like a soda can or something like that. And so he says this could be just like, literally like the garbage that the aliens left behind that is now like, immeasurably valuable to humanity. Some of the stuff that is like collected from these areas, like powers human technology in this book and stuff like that. And so like the idea that you don't need to understand, not only do you not need to understand, the truth is that much like real life, you end up largely ignorant in the end. For everything that we know about everything, the universe, physics, and math, for everything we know in those fields, there is like 10 times, 100 times, an infinite amount of times more things that we don't know. And we will never know. And there's places we will never get to, and there's things we will never be able to achieve. And that's the sort of the sad, pathetic, nihilistic reality of being an infinitesimal, irrelevant being in the universe. But it's echoed in this. You don't always have to understand exactly what the alien life form is, and and there are certain stories in which that idea doesn't work. Like I'll go back to the Alien and like Prometheus and whatever again. Not a good example of something where you want to be mysterious or something like Lost. You know what I mean? But sometimes the mystery of why, especially when you're talking about aliens, why an alien did something, remain mysterious is a good thing, because that's what the word fucking means. It's alien. It's strange. It's not us. It's something other. It's something that lies outside of all of your experiences, because no matter how different everything is here on Earth, no matter how different you are from like some kind of weird fungus or some kind of lizard that lives in a cave in the Himalayas, or how different you are from like a turnip. We were all created from the same goop. Stuff that was created from other goop will theoretically, because we don't know this for sure, but by all accounts, should be so super bizarre that, like Natalie Portman said, it might not even have known we exist. This life form might not have even known that it was mimicking sentient beings, meaning it saw no difference between it copying, an alligator and a person. It's all the same molecules. And that's foreshadowed, actually, now that I think about it, in like the very first scene of the movie. Not the first scene, the first scene where you see her teaching, where she says that we're all the same cells like that. And I think at the end of the day, that's how that life form interacted with us on a cellular level. It became Oscar Isaac and it became Natalie Portman, but there wasn't an it. It became it on a molecular level. Like I said, she said, "Do you think you're Kane?" And he said, "I don't think so." He wasn't sure. I mean, he was sure only because he was aware in his Kane brain of the things that went over his body and was able to conclude that he was probably the copy. But the copy was made unwittingly, like a virus, like some kind of disease. I don't know. Like, as I said, the more I churn this over in my head, the more interesting it becomes to me, which that's a good thing, right? In a movie that's supposed to be thought-provoking. Now I'm thinking more and more about the implications of this, which is A-okay. Like I said, the music and sound design in this movie were top fucking notch. There were a couple of really great intense sequences in it, especially the one with the, like, what was it, like a bear, and he had like a weird, his shout kind of sounded like the woman screaming for help. And at first I was like, okay, it's an animal, it kind of gave the animal the ability to mimic it, but no, it was more like it ate her, and kind of that became part of him. It's all like merges on like an unknowing biological level. So in a way, it was actually her screaming. It wasn't that it was like an evil monster that could imitate the sound of her in order to attract prey. It was just, it became part of that creature. That's even weirder, I think, than to think of like a creature that can, fake a cries for help in order to attract prey. That's about all I got to say about that. Alex Garland, see his name on something, you go see it from now on. I don't know if this movie's going to do well. Probably not. It's up against some stiff competition, unfortunately. And it's weird. And I also heard there was like big behind the scenes battles over how to market the movie and maybe try to change it to make it more communicable, and hats off to them. They fought for their vision and they won, and this is their vision. And I liked it, and I also, that's one of the reasons I saw it on opening weekend. And maybe you should too. Maybe you should try to see it tomorrow, just to show some support for something that's original and cool and interesting. And on that note, I think I'm going to wrap up this relatively short, now that I see it, episode 18 of the Neoncast. As always, I am at Neon Taster on Twitter. The Twitter account for the podcast is at Neoncast. This and other things you can find on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/Neon Taster. My Twitch streams, which you can find on the aforementioned YouTube channel, can also be seen live at twitch.tv/neontaster. And also, if you want to send me an email about anything that's like longer than a tweet or whatever, you can send it to neoncastpod@gmail.com. This has been the 18th, episode 18 of the redundant Neoncast. I'm Neon Taster, and thank you for listening, if you have been listening. And if not, then why am I talking to you?